Hello, this is Dr. Tim Harrison. I'm coming to you from the Institute of Advanced Studies in Religion and Philosophical Studies, also known as my spare bedroom that I turned into an office. This week we're looking at the other books of Moses. We're looking at the other four books that constitute the story of the Exodus, the story of Israel, the children of Israel going back from Egypt into the Promised Land. And so we begin with the story of Moses. Moses really is the beginning of the Jewish nation. And so we see that he was born there among the slaves during a time when Pharaoh was concerned with the rise of the Semitic population. He is going to try to slow that down by killing male babies. This has been done before in antiquity, and it never works, because if you want to stop a population, you have to get rid of the girls. But they give it a try, and Moses' mother tries to save him by putting him in a basket. He's put into the water and floated down into the Nile, where he is seen and saved by the daughter of Pharaoh, and she adopts him. This is where his name comes from. Moses means to be drawn out, which means to be drawn out of the water. And so what we see with Moses is that he then grows up, as the story goes, as one of Pharaoh's grandchildren, and he is given a great education. He is afforded all the things of the royalty of Egypt. And then one day he sees a Hebrew man being beaten by a Egyptian overlord. He becomes angry and kills that man, and then he becomes a known criminal, and he escapes out into the desert area. And when he does, he becomes sort of enters this second part of his life where he is just a sheep herder. He works for his father-in-law, Jethro. So he goes out into the desert, and that's what he's doing until he is confronted by a burning bush. Now, the background of this, of course, was that Joseph took them into Egypt. We believe this was the migration of the Hyksos that we know about, because Joseph was Semitic and the Hyksos were Semitic. It stands to reason that Joseph rose during this time. The Hyksos were in control. And then the Old Testament itself says, and then a Pharaoh who knew not Joseph. And that is a term used to mean a indigenous Pharaoh rises back up, one that was not a Hyksos. So the Hyksos now become slaves, indentured servants, working for a Pharaoh. And so out of that, that's where Moses and the other Semitic people stand. Now, it seems that there were building projects going on. Many identify this with Ramses. We're not sure that that is a pharaoh that it should be identified with. But still, that's quite often who it is identified with. And so they become these indentured servants. Now, one of the things that takes place with Moses that's very important, and in fact this is one of the most important portions of the Old Testament, and this is where Moses goes before the burning bush. And it is important not only because Moses is given his walking papers. He's to go back to Egypt, and he is to demand that Pharaoh let his people go, God's people go, and allow the family of Abraham to come back to Palestine. But the more important thing is that he comes to know the identity of God, the name of God. This is very fascinating, because the name of God is not a noun, it's a verb. It means to be, to have being, to exist. And this is not only extraordinary just from the fact of what the name is and what it represents, but this is extraordinary to the thinking of Hebrews and what they would become and what their religion would mean. This is a God that is the formation of being, the first cause, the existence of all things, and all being and existence comes from him. This is unlike any other thought in ancient religion, because gods were quite often created, or they came from somewhere, they had fathers, or there was always this idea that creation was bigger than the God himself. But this is a very extraordinary thought that God is the ground or the beginning of all existence. Now, Moses, of course, resisted this. He did not want to go back, but God tells him that he will. He's going to go back and he's going to free the Hebrew people. And he's given his brother, Aaron, as sort of a helper to do this. So Moses is on his way back to confront Pharaoh. And we know the story that Moses goes there. We know about the staff that's turned into a snake that swallows the snakes of the magicians of Pharaoh. We know of the plagues that would come. These plagues are, are very extraordinary. There are some people who believe the plagues are actually historical events that are interpreted as miracles. Whatever, at the end of it, when the death of the firstborn happened, it seems that Pharaoh is going to allow the people to go into the desert area. And we're told that after they go and they begin moving in that direction, that, and remember, this isn't just the family of Abraham. This is other peoples too. We're told that actually out of this group, this huge migration going back, that there were Ethiopians that were a part of that as well. And Moses actually marries one of these Ethiopians. And we know this as a cultural designation because the term Ethiopian means burnt face. So these are the indigenous Ethiopians. And if you remember, we know that the nation south of Egypt, Nubia, quite often the people of Cush will come up, and they also became partners with the Egyptians, or either ruled Egypt. So we see that they let the folks go, that Pharaoh then pursues them and is destroyed as they cross the Reed Sea. Now I know that the New Testament, the King James Version says Red Sea. It is quite understandable why they thought it was the Red Sea, because it's there. But now we know, we knew that the name was not red, it was reed, Yom Yam. And so the name of the body of water that they passed over was Reed Sea. So it was a freshwater lake or pond or whatever. And we know now, we've learned that this actually existed up where the Nile would flood and would sink in and cause these large bodies of water up through there. And again, remember, a miracle is a miracle whether you cross the Atlantic or whether you cross Holston Lake. It's still a miracle. Now, they go into the desert, and this is where we'll take the story up in the next video.